tested, well, we had previewed the Audi Q4, which is a fully electric SUV. We've also tested the Skoda Enyaq, which is a fully electric SUV. And now we have this Volkswagen ID.4, the GTX version, which is also a fully electric SUV. Now, all of these three cars are built on the same platform, but this one, with this particular model, the GTX, it has two electric motors, one at the front, one at the back, which means all-wheel drive and almost 300 horsepower. So, because this is a car of the future, an electric car, it of course has to have a lot of techie gadgets and interesting stuff. And yes, well, one of the things are the lights. It's got the Matrix headlights, which are pretty nice, as we've already seen with the Audis and such. Everything is in LED technology, and of course the interesting thing is it also has this cool LED strip at the front, which all lights up. It looks pretty good, especially at night, obviously. And because this is a pretty heavy car, and it's almost got 300 horsepower and all of that torque, it needs to have some pretty beefy tires. So 235s at the front, 255s at the back, and this one is on the optional 21-inch rims, which are pretty giant. No cameras, not even optional, because as Audi has said, when they tried it with the optional cameras instead of the rear view mirrors, people didn't really get used to the whole things with the screens. So I guess they don't offer that anymore until they figure out something else. Also interesting, these things, the door handles, they don't actually jut out anymore. They're nice and flush with the chassis, because of course it might seem like a small thing, but every little bit helps with aerodynamics and thus a well, higher range. The ID.4 definitely has a different, more futuristic look to the, for example, Skoda Enyaq, which looks more ordinary. At the back, I think I actually prefer this look to the front, because it just looks so good with these crazy looking LEDs. It looks really futuristic. I feel like I'm in a sci-fi movie. You've also got an LED strip here at the back, so it's just really good looking. Obviously, you've got electric opening of the trunk. That's a necessity apparently these days. And there's not as much space as you would think, but it does have more space down here at the bottom. Of course, that's for cables and such. Unfortunately, also, this car did not come with a 3-phase optional charger, so I'll have to use this 221. And considering there's like a substation here, I wonder if I could just charge it with them. I think you need a bigger one. Here I have to warn any potential buyers about charging. With an electric car that has a battery with 82 kilowatt hours capacity, you won't be charging it at home with a regular 240 volt plug. Yes, it's possible, but it's not very fast, as this thing will take much more than 24 hours to fill up. Think more like 40 hours. So the only real option, at least if you want to drive more than 100 kilometers a day, is to charge the car at public chargers or install a fast charger at home, which will do the job in around 8 to 12 hours. There's a lot of piano black plastics and capacitive buttons on the inside. Mechanical buttons are actually a rarity. Even the hazard lights are controlled via touch. The seats are quite comfortable, and there's enough space for the passengers in the rear. I think I am just a little bit in love with this car. Well, to be completely honest, I'm in love with electric cars. if we ignore all of the problems they have, the battery technology which isn't quite there, the deteriorating batteries, the long charging times, and the price, and all the other problems, environmental and so on, then yes, I absolutely adore electric cars, and this is no different. So because I always go on and rant about the problems that the electric cars have, because they're not a silver bullet or a golden bullet, whatever you want, for all of the problems in the environment, if you ignore all of that, they are actually really fantastic because of their quietness and relaxed kind of driving. There's no gears, there's plenty of torque, there's no noise apart from the tires. It heats up in cold mornings, like today. It was like 2 degrees in the morning, which is cold because it's not quite winter yet, and it heated up so quickly with that heat pump. It was beautiful. I love it. So I have to mentally prepare myself. Do not rant about the problems of electric cars. This is just a test to see how nice this car is, how it is to drive, and all of the gadgets that it has. And we can start immediately with the fact that there are many pluses and minuses about this car. And I'm not talking about, like I said, the battery technology. For example, I really like the infotainment screen. It looks nice, it looks good, it's fairly easy to navigate and use, despite the fact that everything is touch, including, your radio, volume controls, heating controls, and so on. But you kind of get used to it, I suppose. I think it's absolute stupidity that they actually put the hazard lights on a touch as well, and you have no idea whether you've pressed it or not, unless you hear that clunk, and then the hazards come on. That's a bit stupid. Anyway, but I don't like the fact that it's not incorporated into the actual dashboard. I don't like this look. I also don't like the small screen that's just placed over here behind the steering wheel. I know the Škoda Enyaq had the same thing with a small screen, and I didn't mind that at all, but that was sort of incorporated into the dashboard. It looked nice. This is just sort of stupid. I also really hate this control stalk for the gears, because usually, I don't know why, instinctively I just go for the stalk for the wipers here. I don't know why, and I have to say, oh yeah, of course, it's up there. And then sometimes I also get confused because reverse is actually back and down because you rotate it, and drive and braking is at the front. Braking, driving, as in more regeneration. So yeah, there's a few minuses. There's also the steering wheel controls, but I'll talk about those in just a bit. This is the GTX version, the most powerful version you can get. It's got all-wheel drive because it's got 2 electric motors, one at the front, one at the back, and it's got practically 300 horsepower. I can't remember how many kilowatts that is, 200 and something, 220. Anyway, doesn't matter. So, you're expecting it to have plenty of oomph because all-wheel drive and a lot of torque and a lot of horsepower. But to be completely honest, I was expecting a bit more brutality on full acceleration. It does accelerate very nicely, but I was expecting to be really pressed into the seat and, wow. But no, not quite. It's probably down to a lot of weight, because all of the electric cars really aren't that light because of all those batteries. But yeah, you have the option of also taking the models with 1 electric motor with varying amounts of power. And in fact, if you wanted more range, you would not go for this GTX model because it actually has a little bit less range than the one with a single motor. It's kind of logical because this has a lot more power. But the really interesting thing is, usually, now that we've tested a few electric cars, I know for a fact that most of the time, these electric cars will have an average electrical consumption of about 20 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. But this one, my average long-term is about 23 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That's fine. It's a more powerful version with all-wheel drive and everything. So that's fine. But the really weird thing is, if I'm driving normally like this, slowly, about 50 kilometers per hour, sometimes the electrical consumption is actually higher than I see it on the highway at 130. I don't quite understand how that works, but there you go. That's what happens. I do have to say, it is nice to have all this range. It doesn't have the range of a regular internal combustion car with a bigger tank, of course, but it's still pretty nice. I have never really thought, I really need to find a charging station now. I'm not gonna make it. I never had that sort of range anxiety. We're going to charge this car now, even though I still have plenty of range, 276 kilometers in fact, and my charge is, how much? Show me the charge, 68%. So of course, with an electric car especially, it really depends on how far you will be able to get, depending on how you drive and whether you drive a lot on highways or not. So we're going to charge the car now, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it. Okie dokie, the car is now charging. It's saying it'll need 55 minutes to get to 100%. Of course, if you want to keep the car for a longer time and increase the lifespan of the batteries, it's usually better not to charge them over 70%, and of course also not discharge them below 30% and not charge them fast. But I said I'm not going to talk about the problems of battery technology and infrastructure. No? Okay. Right, let's talk about other things. I wanted to talk about the steering controls. They are all touch, capacitive. You can still press on them, even though I believe there's no actual buttons, mechanical buttons beneath. It sort of gives you a tactile feedback with sounds and vibration and such. It kind of works, but I do have to say it is a bit of a weird feeling when you're pressing down and it feels like a button, but your thumb says it's not a button. It's difficult to explain, but after you use it for a little while, it is a little bit weird and distracting. That's the best way to put it. I also wasn't sure whether I was going to like this, because, you know, with buttons, you know sort of by feel where they are without having to look down on the steering wheel. And over here, it's sort of similar because they've got little indents, so you know sort of where you are. But I have to say, while it does work most of the time, sometimes it's just a bit hit or miss, especially the volume controls. I really cannot get those to work all the time for some reason. I've gotten the limiter and the cruise control and stuff like that to work quite well, but I don't know. It feels more like a gimmick than an actual thing you would like to use. Which is the same with the augmented reality, by the way. I was really looking forward to seeing this thing in action, and unfortunately, because of the way these things work, it's almost impossible to show you, to record that while driving and show you exactly how it looks if you were sitting here. It's practically impossible, but basically you've got a head-up display like normally in front of you, which is pretty big and wide. It's a little bit out of focus. My colleague doesn't see that, but I do, because I've got a very good eyesight. But the augmented reality is sort of even more in the distance. I actually prefer that. And it shows you basically like these chevrons to the left or to the right, which are coming closer if you have navigation turned on and you have a destination set in. It also shows you the lines of a lane if you're going out of a lane. But to be completely honest, it's kind of cool, but also sort of useless. I really don't find it that great. I was really hoping that it would really be crazy augmented reality that wouldn't block your view, but it would show you a lot more things and be sort of sci-fi and stuff. I know this is sort of the first generation. It doesn't even look where your eyes are, so it's not going to work if you do it like this, but I don't know, I don't see much of a point in it. In the end then, I think I prefer the interior and the exterior of the Škoda Enyaq, but I kind of prefer the driving feel of this one. I know that's sort of a weird thing to say because they're both made on the same platform, but it is. It's difficult to explain, I suppose. I guess I'm not very good at this. But yeah, I do prefer this car, the ID.4. And like I said, if I ignore everything else, all the future problems and infrastructure and all that I keep banging on about, it is a very, very nice way of driving and getting driven, because everyone that I've driven in this car said, oh man, this is so nice because it is so quiet, refined, and just, it is lovely.
The base big battery ID.4 costs just under 47,000 euros. For the GTX model with practically all extras, you'll pay just over 70,000 euros.